for me, it was just a really good fit, and I'm so glad that the idea came across the table, because it was just the solution to a lot of problems in my life and to a lot of things that just felt like captivity, you know?
An African lifestyle.
Welcome to Pan-African Lifestyle, where we rep the motherland. We post content regularly and invite you to subscribe and share, if you're a pal. That's a Pan-African Lifestyler.
If you're thinking about moving, one of the very first things that I don't think people tell you enough of is save, save, save. If you're going to just decide to pick up your life from one continent to another, I cannot overstress the importance of saving. And that is one thing that you have to realize when you're coming back on the continent. Depending on the country that you end up staying in, some countries just import everything, and you as a consumer end up eating a lot of that cost, because the price tags will be doubled or tripled in some cases, because you have to carry the burden of the import tax. You have to carry the burden of the state or the local tax. So at the end of the day, you're paying 2 to 3 times what you would pay in other European or, American countries. So just bear in mind that, I had to get myself to the point where I either bit the bullet and just purchased what I needed, or literally just resigned myself to never buying it. I had to purchase all of the SIM cards, plus data, plus airtime for making calls. Now, generally, I've lived in Geneva, I've also lived in Boston in the States. Generally, you have unlimited plans, but those are not commonplace here. So commonplace is you'll buy your set of gigabytes for your internet, then you'll buy your calling airtime or units depending on where you live, and that's what you're going to use for calling. So those are 2 separate purchases. And honestly, for a month worth of data, you could run up to $150 plus. And I am a heavy internet user, so I try to continually stay connected. And in all honesty, that to me is one of my biggest frustrations. They do not tell you just how difficult it is to communicate on the continent, and just how expensive it is. It becomes so frustrating to try and communicate. And I just want to stress on that, because if you're somebody who's a heavy data user, you're somebody who's used to continually being connected, picking up the phone, sending text messages, sending WhatsApps as you go, in all honesty, you might struggle, because just communication on the continent is not where it needs to be just yet. Again, in most countries, it's not there, but you do have your standouts like South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana. You do have those countries where people have figured it out, but in a lot of African nations, data and communication is still considered a privilege. It's not something that is made commonplace unless you can actually afford it. In all honesty, networking is pricey. It gets very expensive, because for you to now go and actually start that networking process, you're going out, you're gonna pay for coffee, pay for lunch. Even if you're just paying for your own, all of that is money. And if, for example, you don't have any income, you're just living off of your savings, that starts to deplete very, very quickly. I know people create this persona of, you land and you just start making connections. Yeah, that can happen, but all of those connections come with a price tag attached to them. So just think about that as you're planning your move. Do you already have inbuilt social networks here? Do you already know people? Do the people that you know have extensive networks? Because if they don't, that will mean that, yeah, I can get you to person A, but for you to get to person D, who really will help you get what you need, that's going to be 2 or 3 lunches deep, or 2 or 3 coffees deep. So just be prepared that outside of, double, triple the price of goods, data and communication, outside of networking, all of those things start adding up. Outside of your travel costs, you will see a lot of people come on the continent and then they're on holiday, and I was one of those people. I was living my best African tourist life. What you don't see is the fact that the cheapest ticket you can get is $400 and something US, and the most expensive is over $1,000. Think about that for a second. You have to understand that aviation is a luxury. Airline travel is still considered a luxury, so you are paying premium, and as well you don't have like tons of options. There's monopoly between like Kenya Airways or Ethiopian Airways. Just because you see a lot of people land and all of a sudden they're like island hopping, that is not sustainable. That is a facade. Unless your father is Dangote, I'm just telling you, as an average African, that is not a sustainable lifestyle. If again, you don't have any income coming in, the money that you have saved is gonna run out. If you're gonna move back to the continent because you're thinking that there are more opportunities here, of which there are. I am one of those people who is here because there are loads of opportunities, especially for young people. Now, if you're somebody like me and you're coming in and you do not have strong social networks where you say like my father's best friend's granddaughter's sister is the minister, like if you do not have those networks, that means you have to be creating those networks and doing all of that legwork. Now, if you have to do legwork on the business front as well as legwork on just like the social front, and I don't know about you guys, but like the older you get, the tougher it is to make friends. I'm literally doing the work of putting myself out there. If that is not something that you are used to as a person, if that's not something that like you feel that you can do to push yourself out of your comfort zone, I cannot say that you will have success in friendships on the continent. Step out of your comfort zone. Continually strive to make these connections a real thing, because it's one thing when you meet up with somebody, have a nice coffee, and it's like, we'll talk, dies, never see the person again. But you have to continually push. You have to continually set up the next coffee date, set up the next lunch, set up the next hangout, because otherwise, nobody's going to do the legwork for you. And honestly, people don't talk enough about how lonely it is. Like if you cannot afford to pay $50 to $150 every month for airtime and for data, and pray that the actual internet works so you continually are connected to your friendships, to your friend groups, right? That means you're going to have to encounter issues with communication, where you would have been the most responsive friend, which I used to be. Now you become the friend who people don't hear from for weeks on end. I am that person now. And it's so unfortunate with my friendships, because I have genuinely lost friendships, and I have genuinely like just disconnected from friends because I physically cannot communicate. You end up realizing that like you really do get to a very lonely place, because you're struggling to maintain connections, and by all the forces outside of your control, you just can't. And I want people to know, be prepared for all your friendships to change, all your core relationships to change. What I guess I wasn't ready for was the complete disregard for the law, the complete disregard for personhood, especially as a woman, the complete disregard for just you as a person, I think, is what caught me off guard the most with regards to corruption as I've encountered it on the continent. It is so pervasive. It takes corruption to a whole other level, where the entire system is rigged against you, where you as a citizen don't really have a voice, and unless you're well connected, you don't really have recourse, unless you're going to be threatening with lawyers, or do you know who I am, or my father is so and so, or I'm related to blah blah blah. Like, unless you have, again, those social connections, you will be struggling so much, because a lot of times people coming from Europe or from the States, you have structure. You know, even though the police is corrupt in one way, you can go off and record on your dash cam, you can make your complaint. If you get a parking ticket, you can have your day in court. Like, all of those systems are in place. And yes, of course, I'm not saying those systems are perfect, but they are in place and you do have recourse. But that's not the case here. I have come to learn that outside of just like praying to sweet baby Jesus, you just don't know who you will get. The idea that the police is here to protect you is not a thing. The police is here to get from you, and I understand why. I understand. However, if you're coming in from outside, people never talk about how hard, or people don't talk enough about how hard it is to make that mental shift where everybody who's engaging with you that is in some type of authority is looking at you for a handout. So, for example, you get stopped by the police is going to automatically ask you for money. If you say no, that's automatic arresting. And if you go to their chief, the chief doesn't care. Just, if you cannot deal with that, do not come. It is honestly not the place for you. I would say maybe go to South Africa, go to Namibia. Again, pick your countries.
It just all made sense. It's a lot to it, to be honest with you. A lot of it has to do with my beliefs. And for me, it's like, first off, I naturally was just a good fit, you know. I just started like seeking truth, you know what I mean, in like all areas of life. And I just had some things revealed to me about the world we live in and about the country, about the United States and the rulers and the powers that be, and just the opportunity presented itself to, well, I should say not the opportunity, the idea presented itself to just leave the country. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do that. So me and a couple friends, we just sold everything we had, and we booked some plane tickets, and we had no clue how we was gonna survive. We had no knowledge about anything. Like, we was just, you know, what we did was not uncommon in general, but to black people and within black culture, it's absolutely uncommon. So that's a big thing, you know what I mean? And once we left, like, we had the mindset, and me in particular, I had the mindset where I wasn't going back. Like, I didn't leave to just go straight back. Like, and then once I left, you know, I saw a lot of the benefits of being outside the United States. And I really appreciated a lot of the things, especially the freedom that you have, like the way it feels, like you don't feel that oppressiveness that you feel when you're in the United States, especially as a black man. Like, you don't really feel like oppressiveness that they really, that's very like heavy in the United States. Like, you always looking over your shoulder, and you're driving down the street and the cop rolled by, and you kind of like checking seat belts, and you know what I mean, checking double and triple checking the speed limit, and you just paranoid and nervous for no reason. You know what I mean? Even though like nothing is wrong and you're not doing anything illegal, it's like there's always like this taskmaster, somebody looking or like bearing down on you. And that feeling, as soon as you leave the country, it's gone. It's like, I can't explain it unless you leave, right? Even if you just take a visit or take a trip, you'll understand what I mean. Like, that whole like being black thing, not saying that there aren't challenges that come with being black, but that whole like, that oppressiveness is gone. For me, life is so much more stress-free. Like, I didn't even really understand all of the benefits that came with leaving the country. For me, it was just a really good fit, and I'm so glad that the idea came across the table, because it was just the solution to a lot of problems in my life, and to a lot of things that just felt like captivity, you know what I mean? And I just feel free. You know, so the original reason is because, like I say, my personal beliefs about the country and about my faith kind of led me to exploring life outside the United States, understanding and kind of having like a, kind of looking forward in the future of the condition of the United States, and kind of having like an idea of what's going to happen in the future, and just kind of not wanting to be in the United States once, you know, as it progresses. You know what I mean? The United States is really, it's at the top. It's reached this peak, you know what I mean? And it can only go down from where it is now. So, and the rest of these countries in the world, they can really only go up. I mean, if you still like acting domestic in a globalist society, you can get left behind. And I really believe that. And then after like traveling and then experiencing that for myself, it's been confirmed. So, you know, praise the Most High, like He's been able to sustain my life. You know, I believe in God, and He been able to sustain my life outside of the country, because it's not easy, especially if you are new to business, new to self-employment, and you just have no clue and no skills. It's not the type of thing where you could just jump up and do. Now, let's say you've been working on trying to get something going for yourself, especially online over the last 2-3 years or so, and you kind of like got some ideas and might be a better fit for you. Or if you just well educated, to be honest with you, it just came down to not feeling like I was welcome. Like, you know, all of these Karens and all of these events that's taking place with the overt racism and discrimination and prejudice, they're not hiding no more. Like, political correctness went out the window. I'm not the type of person to just sit and deal with it and complain and march and protest. I don't care enough. Like, I don't have, like, you know, a lot of black people own some, oh, my forefathers worked to build this country. I don't care about all that. You know what I mean? Like, I can go to another place and build a better life for myself, and it's more affordable. You know what I mean? It's just better options. So I'm not finna sit and fight to be somewhere where, one, people don't want me, and two, even if it's like the individuals don't want you there, like American citizens don't want us there, and then the government treat us like they don't want us there, or they want us locked in cages, you know what I mean, and controlled like animals or something. So the whole thing is like, why are we fighting to stay on the plantation? You kind of really have to take an assessment of yourself and determine what kind of person are you. But I know for me, the plantation life ain't for me. I prefer the freedom. So everybody different in that way. And you kind of had to take an assessment for yourself. But that's why I left the country, because the pros outweighed the cons. I'm not making it seem like at all that it's perfect outside of the United States, because it's not. And there's so many things within the United States that I miss and that I love. But I'm willing to give those things up for freedoms, for other things that just don't exist and cannot exist in the United States. And to me, that's what's important, and that's why I left.
Thanks for tuning in to Pan-African Lifestyle. Share the name of the African country you'd like to visit in the comments section. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Pan-African Lifestyle.
Pan-African lifestyle.